Okay, let's talk about the RAP68 shotgun for a minute here. I'm going to try to keep this short. Last time I did this, I ended up recording for a full 30 minutes about this. So, it comes with, well, it doesn't come with, I've modified it to take 3 different stocks. I'll talk about all the different stuff I've added. This isn't a normal RAP68, RAM68 that you would get from either Real Action Markers or RAP4. Differences, we'll start here with the main stock tube. Standard ASA threading back here in the back. You can see that there is a brass fitting back there with a little nipple to screw in different tanks. And also behind that, you can use to, or behind that there is a screw in place to chrono the marker itself. I'll talk about chronoing once I finish this. So this is not the stock that it comes with. This is actually an aftermarket one that I added. I believe it's made of nylon reinforced plastic, a lot nicer than the stock one. You can see what was left of it. Slightly different size, slightly different dimensions. This one I heated and actually expanded and put some tape on it to give it a little better look to it. This is, what is this, like a gaffer tape, so it's like a cloth slash tape, very durable, very good tape. I like the way it looks, which is why I added it. Back to this though, this is a standard stock. It'll take 12 gram CO2s. So just slide it like that. And forgive me for trying to do this all with one hand. Anyway, you can see threads in like that. It'll plug into there. This little clip plugs in, and then you can fully extend or retract the stock. In the fully extended position, this is what it looks like. In order to use it with that 12 gram adapter, you're going to have it fully extended. Not a big deal if you're a normal sized adult. So beyond that, we also have this stock, which is a spare air style stock. It uses 88 gram spare air canisters that are made by Crosman. You can get them at Walmart for $10 for a pack of 2, or $10 for 1 tank and the adapter. The adapter screws right in, normal standard ASA, and from there the spare air screws in. You can see it's just a puncture pin, just like a 12 gram CO2 cartridge. With a 12 gram, I'm getting 25-ish shots, and then after that the shots are barely coming out the barrel, barely going 20 feet, obviously won't break. So with an 88 gram, I'm assuming it's going to be in the 100 to 150-ish range without doing any math. Aside from that, you can still go with the option of putting a bottle directly off the back, screwing it in place. Not a very tactical look, and since if you were being interested in something like this, a RAP68 shotgun, you would want a tactical look, hence why I went with the stock off here. Instead of having just a tank hanging off the back of your gun, you have a nice M4 style stock hanging off the back of your gun. Looks really good. Next thing I've added, I've actually put shotgun shells on the side and a shotgun shell holder. You can see from here, they've got a little string on them, pop back in place. They're actually the same width as a paintball, and they'll hold paintballs. So it's kind of an extra way to hold some extra paint on you while you play. All of them are glued down with the exception of this middle one, which comes out. You can see there's actually a paintball in there right now. There's a little Phillips head screw down there, and that allows you to access that screw. There's also screws here and here, but they're right there in the front, and that just allows you to disassemble the gun. These screws go far enough into the frame that you can't actually take the frame off when you're doing a full disassembly, which I'll handle in a later video. Yeah, standard safety, trigger, paintballs load, similar to shotgun shells. You see from the bottom here, pop that open, there's your bolt, and when you cock it, you can see this little black thing coming out here is a pusher that's going to actually push and load your balls up through and into the breech. You can see there's a string attached to it, and that's basically helping it make that 90-degree turn when it's loading. The bad thing is that little catch here will catch your spring, so if you're not careful, you can damage that spring while cocking the marker. The best thing I could possibly offer to you, any advice, anyone owning one of these, is never, ever actuate the pump arm with this open. You open this up and you start pumping away, you're going to get that spring caught in this area here. It's going to pull your spring inside out, and you're going to be in a world of hurt. Not a fun time. So make sure that's closed. The other thing, too, is if your safety's engaged and you're pulling the trigger and nothing's working, if you pull harder on the trigger, all you're going to do is damage your trigger. Not a very good feature as well. To disassemble this marker, to guess it, you're going to need a metric set of Allen keys, and I'll talk about those, which specific ones you're using, and a pair of needle nose pliers to chrono it. First, we'll talk about loading, and let me set this down and kind of show you, kind of set setup I've got. So, you know, to load it, you're going to have to load through the bottom, and it's easier to invert the marker when you do it, and in that situation, that's why I put paintballs, well, there went one, in these shells. The marker's already inverted. It's easy just to get a handful of paintballs out of there. I usually drop one into the breech there, and then load one at a time, shotgun shell style. These little guys pop up into that tube. This acts as a little detent to hold them in place. Once that latches in place, that releases them. You can go ahead and pump them from there, and as needed to fire. So you can see that little guy, that holds it in place. Hopefully you saw that. I wasn't checking the camera when I did that. So that explains why that's there. Barrel, its own random threading. The best suggestion I could make would be to bore the barrel and leave about, I don't know, 3 or 4 millimeters. Russ on MCB was telling me probably best thing you could do for this, because it allows you to size the barrel, and instead of any kind of gap between where the barrel would begin and the bolt would hit, you've got just that nice freak barrel insert. So I would highly recommend that for someone willing to put a little bit of money, more than what I have, into something like this. Chronoing the marker, real quick. You can see right here, 2 little holes on each side of that. Phillips head, or sorry, needle nose pliers. We're going to stick that in there and just unscrew it. That'll come right out. Okay, behind it is a spring. This thing used to be, it had its own little, like, I don't know, fiber packing, looked like cotton, and then a little mesh screen that eventually wore away. It was in bad shape when I got this thing, and I replaced it with, which as you can see here is kind of stuck in the spring right now. No big deal. Still that cotton packing, and then I replaced it with an actual mesh screen that I made from, I believe, a sink component. The thing still works great. I believe that's mainly just kind of some sort of filter to keep CO2 from doing this thing. You can see when this is in here, you have to rotate it out. There is a gas ready indicator that pops slightly into this chamber, and all it does is pop a little red indicator. Right here will pop out when the marker is gassed, and it pops far enough into this little area to pose a problem when trying to take this out. All this spring does is provide tension on the actual screw, which unfortunately you cannot see in there, but this is the screw you're going to be using to manipulate back and forth in the area behind the pin valve, and it's just adjusting the tension on the spring that operates the pin valve. It's a Nelson valve design, so very simple design. Yeah, and it looks like a number 5 is what you're going to need to either up the FPS or bring it down. Screwing the screw in is going to make the spring tension harder. It's going to make it shoot harder. Taking it out is going to make the spring tension less. Yeah, I got that backwards. Screwing it in is going to make the spring tension harder, which is going to make less air come through. Because less air is coming out, you're going to have a lower FPS. Backing it out, less spring tension, that's what's going to let it shoot faster. So the issue I've been having with this thing has been chronoing kind of low lately, and as general maintenance, as well as just kind of show you what the bolt looks like, the easiest way to take the barrel off is like this little screw here. Once you screw that out, this slides. You can pull this little doohickey off, slide that out, and off the barrel comes. Again, the barrel's got its own random thread. I would highly recommend boring this thing out for freak inserts. It is an unported 18-inch brass barrel. You can see down there the nice shininess. I've actually taken a Dremel and narrowed this a bit. I made it a nice little ramp kind of to it as the ball come in there, and then polished it as best I can. You can't tell on the camera, but it's ever so slight, just enough to provide a good transition from the breech for the paintball. Next, we come into this, and I believe it is a 2.5. To take this screw out, this screw is the screw that holds the bolt in place, and as kind of an academic note, you can see the pump arm here moves this entire distance before it even engages cocking the bolt itself. So a very, very long pump on this thing, and again, it's supposed to simulate the real effects of this. Kind of talking about this too as I'm screwing this out, there's also, you'll see this thing, it's called bolt release. Bolt release was a feature that made it act like a shotgun. I've disabled it because it's worthless in paintball. It basically means when you're out of paint, you can't shoot, and that's a really bad thing if you want to try to convince people you still have paint while you're, reloading or doing whatever. You want to make sure that you had some tension on this thing as you're pulling this out. Main reason is because this thing will come flying forward. Here's the bolt. You can see I put a star shape, like a Starfire bolt idea to it. This thing chopped paint like it was its job when I first got it, and this is one of the things that Russ on MCB, a couple other guys recommended was a good idea, and I followed through with it. Cut these channels into it, polished the heck out of it to make sure it was a nice and smooth surface that wouldn't be breaking any balls, and it seemed to really help with ball breaks. Immediately after doing this, I noticed many less ball breaks. The spring here, which this is my point of contention, because this thing's been chronoing low, it has to be this spring. The spring for the pin valve and this spring are pretty much the only two active springs in the system. Like I said, this spring that I showed you earlier is just holding that chronoing screw in place. It's a tensioning spring just to keep it from moving. I'm pretty sure this spring is seen its better days. This right here is a spring from a Phantom kit. This is a red spring, one of the harder tension springs. As you can see, it's much shorter. We'll say 3/4 of an inch shorter to a half an inch, somewhere in there. It's just not going to work with this system. You're going to have to call RAP4 RAM, Real Action Markers, one of those guys, get a replacement spring. I think once that spring is replaced, this thing will shoot chrono well within standards, maybe even higher. And then you can just work with the chrono screw in the back and everything will be fine. That's basics. It's just taking this thing apart. I disabled that bolt lock mechanism, and you can see here, when you pull it to the off position, there's a little groove there. You can actually put oil in there, and that'll help you oil the marker. Put a couple drops in there, ratchet the mechanism, maybe shoot a couple dry fire shots, and that'll help lube the marker between regular maintenance. By disabling that bolt lock mechanism, I was actually able to have this thing now have the ability to auto trigger, in that you can hold the trigger down and just pump. It'll fire for every single pump of the marker. It's a neat little feature. Phantoms have it, and it's something that you would want in paintball, the ability to rapidly put out paint in a hurry. That's basically it for basic disassembly and issues with the marker that I've noted. We'll go ahead and go for a second video after this of taking this apart from this point. Let me know if you have any questions and if this is helpful to anyone out there who has one of these. Thanks.